In this lesson, we are going to examine the next component of interpreting information when we read by understanding how to use details in a passage to make inferences and draw conclusions about the text. As you recall, the main idea is the key point that the author is attempting to get across. It's the most important idea in the passage. Oftentimes, this point will be directly stated, typically in the last sentence or two of the introductory paragraph. But what if the author's point is not so obvious? What do we do? Well, this is when we're going to make what is known as an inference. An inference is when the author will hint at or suggest the main idea. And we do this by using the information stated by the author to determine his or her unstated message. So, some steps that we can take to make an inference are to first look for the supporting details. What types of information does the author present in the passage? Then we're going to think about how those details are related. A good example would be if the kids are playing in the living room and you hear a crash, you can infer that they knocked something over. Let's consider a few points. We already know that all texts will have main ideas and details. The details within that text are going to provide clues that tell us what the author's point is about. Those details are clues to the author's overall message. Now, before we get into inferences, it is important to distinguish between an inference and an implication. It's easy to get those confused. Anytime that the author sends a message, the author is making an implication. So the author implies the message when he or she sends it. The reader is the one who does the inferring. And what that means is that you are going to receive or infer the message that the author is trying to send. So let's think for a moment about what happened to Alex and practice a little bit with making inferences. Alex was walking home from the bus stop after work. A fire engine rushed past, sirens shrieking. Alex noticed smoke billowing up to the sky a block away. As he got closer, he saw 2 fire engines parked in front of a house across the street from his apartment. Firefighters were spraying the house with water. So let's think about what Alex could infer. Well, we can infer based on the information given that the house across the street is on fire. How do we know this? Well, let's think about the details in the passage. We know that there is a fire engine that rushed past and the siren was shrieking. We also know that smoke billowed to the sky. We know that 2 fire engines were parked in front of the house. And firefighters were spraying the house with water. So these details support the inference that the house across the street from Alex's apartment is on fire. Let's take a look at another example. Eloy Flores is a single parent. He gets his children dressed and fed before he leaves for work. Then he drops them off at the daycare center. When Eloy works late, he nervously checks his watch. He has to be at the daycare center no later than 6:30. After he picks up his children, he heads home and cooks dinner. He gives the children a bath and has them in bed by 9 o'clock. After doing the dishes, Eloy watches TV. If he has the energy, he plays the banjo. Then he gets ready for the next day. He packs lunches and does laundry. The next morning, Eloy begins his day all over again. So which sentence tells the main idea of the paragraph? Eloy gets his children dressed and fed each morning. Eloy doesn't have much time to practice the banjo. Eloy prepares meals for his family. or Eloy spends his time working and caring for his children? Well, if we think about all of the details in the passage, it is easy to see that D, Eloy spends his time working and caring for his children, is the implied main idea, even though the author does not state it. The details in the passage is all focused on what Eloy does to get ready for work and how he takes care of his children. So we can see that most of his time is spent around work and the care of his children. Now let's consider conclusions. A conclusion defined is just simply a logical statement. Typically, it's going to be a general statement about something that includes a specific example. So when we read, we're going to find meaning by combining what we read with what we already know. To help understand this a little bit better, let's think about a conclusion as the result of a conclusion formula. That's going to be a general statement plus a specific example, and they will combine to create a conclusion. So we have the general statement, all power tools make noise. A specific example would be electric drills are power tools. Therefore, we can conclude that electric drills make noise. So we see that this logically makes sense because power tools make noise and electric drills are power tools. So the general statement and the example must be true for the conclusion to be true. If either is false, the conclusion will not be true. So if we said hand-driven screwdrivers instead of electric drills, that's going to make the conclusion false. So watch for general statements that begin with all, every, or only. Usually, when those specific words are used, it will often make the statement false. All right, we have an example here of an argument, and we're going to determine if any of the statements are false. All stars are balls of fire. Our sun is a star. Therefore, our sun is a ball of fire. Are any of these statements false? No. All three statements are true. So if all three statements are true, the conclusion is true. All cats are stupid. Luna is a cat. Luna must be stupid. So, are any of these statements false? Yes, the statement all cats are stupid is a false statement. Cats are actually quite intelligent. So, since that one statement is false, that means the conclusion is false. Let's take a look at this one. Only humans know American Sign Language. Coco the gorilla knows American Sign Language. Therefore, Coco must be human. So are any of these statements false? Yes, only humans know American Sign Language. This statement is false because when you look at the second statement, it says Coco the gorilla knows American Sign Language. Coco the gorilla is obviously not a human. Coco is a gorilla. So the first statement of only humans know American Sign Language is automatically false. Therefore, the conclusion is false. And one last example. Endangered species are nearly extinct. Monk seals are endangered. Therefore, monk seals are nearly extinct. Are any of these statements false? No. So therefore, the conclusion is true. So all things considered, how does this apply to reading? So when you combine what you read with what you already know to find meaning in a passage, it's going to be similar to making inferences. When we make inference, we are reading between the lines. And when we draw conclusions, we're reading beyond the text. When we draw a conclusion, we are bringing in our own experience. So in reality, drawing conclusions is going to test your ability to reason through the information that you were given in conjunction with your own personal experience and knowledge. So we take stated facts plus our implied facts plus our personal experience and knowledge, and that will give us a conclusion. Let's take a look at this example. Do animals feel emotions? For centuries, many people denied that animals felt emotions. This gave them an excuse to mistreat animals. Some farmers worked horses to death. Hunters clubbed baby seals for their fur. Even today, there are still scientists who perform painful and unnecessary tests on animals. For example, blinding rabbits to test which mascara is most waterproof. But much evidence of animals' ability to feel has accumulated in recent years. In his book, When Elephants Weep, psychologist Jeffrey Mason documented emotions of many species. He observed gorillas who know 200 words in sign language, elephants who paint pictures, and dogs who warn their epileptic owners several minutes before a seizure hits. He even observed bears who walk up a hill most nights to watch the sunset, apparently just because of its beauty. So we're going to take a look at the stated facts, the implied facts, apply our own experience and knowledge, and come to a conclusion about whether or not animals feel emotions. The stated facts from the passage are gorillas know sign language, elephants paint pictures, and dogs warn epileptic owners before a seizure. The implied facts are bears enjoy beautiful sunsets and animals want to communicate. So let's think about what our own experience and knowledge could tell us to help us draw this conclusion. My dog is happy when I get home and sad when I leave. Okay, so this again is based on what we have experienced with our own pets. Once we consider all of this information, we can come to the conclusion that yes, I believe animals feel emotions. So before we go, let's wrap up with some final thoughts. In this lesson, we learned about inferences, and we talked about how all texts are going to have main ideas and details. These details are the clues that are going to tell us what the text is about. And they also provide us clues as to the author's message in the text. And remember, don't get implications confused with inferences. When the author implies the message, he's sending it. As the reader, it is your responsibility to receive or infer the message. And then finally, we talked about conclusions. And conclusions may differ from person to person because they are based on that individual's experiences and knowledge. So you're going to use your own beliefs, attitudes, and values to draw conclusions about the behavior of people when you read. So the written text is simply what we would call the jumping off point. It is important. We're not trying to diminish that. But what you bring to the reading is just as important.